Welcome to the Will Leitch Show. I am the aforementioned Will Leitch, and I thank you for spending part of your day with me. Today's show is about broadcasting, specifically sports broadcasting, this being a sports show after all. A cousin of mine was once studying to be a sports broadcaster. His college had this program where you could do practice play-by-play calls of real games with your partner as part of your reel. He would say he and his fellow student partner had to flip a coin to avoid being an analyst. He told me nobody wants to be an analyst because no one goes to college to be an analyst. That's always some athlete who just walks in off the street. He said they don't have to learn anything. There are currently thousands and thousands of wannabe sports broadcasters studying their craft in our nation's journalism programs, and the vast majority of them, whether they are good or not, will end up giving up and getting a real job. Meanwhile, a retired athlete who just 2 months before was yelling fake news at every reporter who tried to ask him a question just picks up a mic and starts telling locker room stories, and boom, he's hired. My cousin has been trying to make it in sports broadcasting for 10 years. Jason Witten has been doing it for 10 minutes. Guess who has a job? Of course, my cousin doesn't have nearly as many interesting things to say as Jason Witten does. And this is the dirty secret of pro athletes. They are just generally better at everything than you are. Okay, maybe not Settlers of Catan, you freaking nerd. But everything else. They can not only jump higher and run faster than you can, they're more charming, they're more telegenic, they're more magnetic generally than you are. When Troy Aikman and Joe Buck stand next to each other, who do you think the people look at first? Sports broadcasters can work on their presentation for years and not have the instant screen presence of a former jock. They're better at this because they're just better at life. Today's guest, Keith Hernandez, won an MVP, nearly a dozen Gold Gloves, and 2 World Series. He put together a stealth Hall of Fame adjacent career as a player. But nobody thinks of Keith Hernandez as a player anymore. It's all the TV work he has done since then, the Just for Men commercials, the Mets games, and of course, Seinfeld. He has become an American pop culture icon, larger than he ever was as a player, simply by picking up a microphone and talking into it. Of course, it helps that he is so good at it. I feel like I have known Keith Hernandez for years, even though I literally just met him about 45 seconds ago. The dream of millions of Americans is to become a star, and he has done it without really trying. He has made it look exceptionally easy because that's what athletes do. They are just like us, but evolved, heightened, and yes, special. I could finish this monologue with the most blindingly brilliant insight imaginable. It wouldn't have half the effect of Keith Hernandez coming over, winking, and giving you a thumbs up. This is how it should be. I know. I am nevertheless trying not to cry. Our guest today is the 11-time Gold Glover, former MVP, 2-time world champion, first with the St. Louis Cardinals, and current broadcaster for the New York Mets and author of the new book, I'm Keith Hernandez. Please welcome Keith Hernandez. Sir,
how are you?
Thank you very much.
How are you?
Thank you for coming on the Fake Talk Show. You've actually been on Real Talk Show, so this is thank you for coming on.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So one of the things I'm fascinated by you about, I'm curious what your thoughts on this is. You had a fantastic playing career, and the book is primarily is about actually almost the first half of your playing career. But what I find fascinating about you and about athletes in general that go into media is you were a pretty famous player. But you are a really famous post-playing career person. Like you're like a big media personality now. Do you think if you have just played and then never done television afterwards, do you think you're writing a book called I'm Keith Hernandez right now? Like it's probably television's made a big part of that, right?
Well, I think Seinfeld's been a big
we'll get into that. Yeah, we'll get into that.
So I think that gave me a whole different. That got me out there to the nation and beyond that. And I think playing in New York, if I had played in St. Louis my whole career, and this is no slight to St. Louis, I love playing in St. Louis, but this is the media capital of the world, so probably that would not have happened.
I find it always kind of funny that Cardinals fans, like my father always forgets he played for the Mets, and Mets fans always forget you ever played for the Cardinals. So I feel like I guess it's good to have that dichotomy. But like, did you imagine, like when you were playing, did you imagine you would do television? Is it something you had interest in, or like did you do a lot of training for? Or you were just like, here, I'll take the mic and I'll just start yakking.
I had no visions. I had no desire to go into TV. I was in retirement, and I was up at the lanes in the Upper East Side, and a young agent came up to me and said, you should be doing Met games. are you interested? And I said, no. And he said, well, can I leave you my phone number, and do you mind leaving me yours? And you mind if I call you every, 3 months or so, see if you change your mind? Well, around 2 years later, he kept calling.
He kept calling for 2 years.
Yeah, and I finally said, okay. I said, fine, I'll give it a shot. Did he
know you? Did he know that? Like,
well, he knew who I was.
But I know. But like, you're a charismatic guy. But did he know you well enough to know that, or like you're like really good on television? But like, did he know that, or was he just like, you're a former athlete, you'll probably be fine?
I think as an agent, he saw potential.
Okay.
I guess I didn't know him. He knew me. He was a Met fan.
Right.
He's a Long Island guy, so
right.
he grew up a Met fan.
The strike zone, right?
So it did make sense. I mean, me going maybe into the booth, I never dreamed it would work out like this.
I think one of the things that I find, because I personally think that the Mets broadcast team, I think I'm not the only one that believes this, is generally considered the best baseball broadcast team, the local broadcast team in all of baseball. And the thing I think is so good about it is no one seems to be trying all that hard, if that makes sense. Like, obviously you're trying, you put in the effort, you put in the work, but it doesn't feel like we're on TV and we're doing TV things. You guys are just talking. Was it always like that, or have you just gotten better about it?
Well, I think number one, Gary is probably the best play-by-play guy, and I think he makes Ron and I shine. Gary came over from radio, had never done, I don't think he ever did television. So that was a new form for him. Ronnie had only done 1 year in Washington.
Right.
And I was the one really with the most experience on television and with MSG, then before the Mets started the new network. When we went on, right before we went on, Ron tells a story, we were all a little bit nervous, and I just looked at Ron and I said, you do the pitching, I'll do the hitting.
And that's in.
And, duh.
20 years later, right?
Ron was a very, very good pitcher.
Right.
And I think that aspect of the broadcast where you can bring both perspectives.
So do you think it's hard? Do you think it's hard to do? Like, because for me, like I'm a writer, so I'm just trying to get better at this. And I know a lot of people train a long time to do television. It doesn't seem to me that it's that hard for you.
Well, I started doing it in 2000, and I had good people in the truck. I had Bill Webb, the just recently passed away, who was the Emmy, the Fox's main producer and director. And I had good producers, and I had good talent play-by-play guys that I broke in with. I had no experience, So Ted Robinson comes to mind, was very helpful. Bill Webb was helpful, and Gary's just good at what he does. He brings Ronnie and I in. He's really the maestro, the play-by-play guy.
Do you get competitive about Alex Rodriguez is doing the games for Fox now, and he's really talked about how this is like almost become golf for him. It replaces competition to where like he comes completely with a million papers and he's all set up, and I want to be the best hitter of all time, and I want to be the best broadcaster of all time. Do you think that's the right way to do it? Is that the way that you did it, or do you want to be the best, or do you think that would ruin it if you?
Well, a national broadcast is so much different because you're once a week, you're going into a town, you don't really, you might have the Tigers in Toronto. Right. At least me, I'm in the National League. I know what I want to do, prepare for each game, and the main work is with the play-by-play. He's got to keep it all together. I'm just observing, and I know the game, and I'm sure Ronnie feels the same way. I do have certain numbers that I like to prepare when I prepare and go into a game. Left-right splits, how they hit in the clutch, what kind of fielders they are, what kind of arm they are, and then I just observe as the game unfolds.
But you're not sweating it. You're just.
No, I only sweat in the open.
Right. Oh, really?
My opens are awful. my opens are all out.
Because you're not reacting to anything.
Took me a long time to be able to look into the camera. And everybody says, well, just look into the camera, pretend it's your mother, pretend it's your girlfriend.
Right.
It's a camera.
Right, it's not.
And it took me a while to get comfortable to look in the camera and talk. And I noticed when I watched other broadcasts, whether it's football and they have a form of talent there, when they're looking at each other and not in the camera, I like it better when I'm sitting home and they're looking at me, like they're engaging me. So I try on the open, we have to. Ron's very good at it. Gary's a pro.
Yeah, but
and
it still feels awkward
will
this time?
Invariably stutter, stammer, and screw up. But it's okay.
I'm going to think this every single time I watch the Open now. I'm the idea of you being nervous is just not something that I don't associate you with nervousness.
I'm always going, and it's just a 2 minute, a minute open, minute and a half. It's just Ronnie does half of it, and I'll manage to blow it.
I'm gonna be right. So the book, to me, and this kind of touches on what we talked about earlier, was the idea of this book focuses mostly more in the Cardinals than it actually
Yes.
does on the Mets, which is funny because, again, as we kind of talked about, a lot of Mets fans forget that you played for the Cardinals. And I remember when the Neil Allen trade, I knew it as the Neil Allen trade
Right.
when it happened. I think Rick Owensby, I think was
Rick
the
Owensby,
was the other
yeah.
one on there. And so you focus on that here, but it does feel like one of the things I like about the book is it focuses on a period of time that I
Right.
know very well, and I remember, and I know this Cardinal stuff very well. But certainly, it seems a little different than there's a little bit of the Seinfeld stuff in here, and there's a little bit of that stuff. But really, this is actually more. This feels like the start of it feels like you got 4 or 5 more in you.
Well, originally, this was a 2.5-year project, by the way, and a lot of research. And we realized that Little Brown wanted 90,000 words, which is what that is,
Right.
and it's around 330 pages. And we realized around 6 months in that if we were going to do my whole life, it was going to be 800, 900 pages. So we said, okay, everybody knows me about the finished product. Let's do my journey. Because if we did my whole life, it'd have been so watered down.
Right.
And I wanted a, I
it's
wanted
real.
a book.
It's very real, right.
And so it's about my ups and downs until I realized I was a major league player, which was 1980, after the month of April.
So this seems to be selling well. Seems to be going okay. It will go even better now that it's been on the Will Leitch.
Yes, absolutely.
But nevertheless, you have to finish it now. This is like doing the Infinity War and then stopping right there.
Well,
you have to do another one.
We've done all the research, and if this book does well, there will hopefully be a sequel. It's up to Little Brown.
Right. All right. Well, fair enough. Well. Okay. We have a little game that we play.
Right.
Okay. We have a lot of game. But first, before we get to that, we have a thing called frivolous questions of dubious import. These are relatively short, easy questions, specifically focused on you. And my first question, really, for you: are you going to start gambling on sports now? Can you gamble on sports now? Are you going to be gambling on sports now that it's legal?
We're not supposed to gamble.
No one was supposed to gamble until last week.
I'm still involved in the game.
Oh, so being paid by
I can't gamble.
SOI. Okay.
I cannot gamble.
Okay. Because no one, I can't gamble now, but in a couple of weeks, I can. You can't, but I can. Don't. Gambling is bad for you. Don't do it. Baseball. Do you think baseball is less fun now? As a viewing experience, not so much to play. It seems fun to play, but as a viewing experience.
I think with all the things going on in the ballpark and with texting and cell phones and all the different venues around the ballparks, it used to be you go to the ballpark to watch a game. Now it's more of a social event. They're walking around. I think the games are too long.
Yeah.
I know they're trying to correct that. The game has changed radically. It's more home runs. It's a different game, less speed, which I found very exciting as a player and as a spectator. Right. But I think they're maybe the pendulum's starting to slowly come back a little bit. We'll see. The players are bigger and stronger. The ballparks they built now are a little bit are smaller. I don't know why they did that. Well, they probably want home runs. Right. But to me, the home run's like the slam dunk. I mean, Earl.
You have too many of them.
Earl the Pearl Monroe told me one time. He goes, Keith, anybody can dunk. He goes, can they hit the 10-foot jumper at the buzzer?
Wow. I cannot do either one of those things, to be very clear. Okay, should you be in the Hall of Fame?
I'm borderline. If I was a shortstop or a second baseman, I'd be in.
Right.
Home runs, I think, are more important. I don't think defense counts as much. Yeah.
Though I think it seems like there's been a shift.
There's a shift. I know that sabermetrically and analytically,
you've totally benefited.
Brian Kenny at ESPN. Just
I know Brian. Yes.
Blows my horn all the time. He thinks I should be in the Hall of Fame.
Stop doing that, Brian.
And one writer compared my stats. A story. Marty Noble wrote for Newsday, and he wrote a column comparing me with the stats of Brooks Robinson as far as juxtaposed our defense and our offensive output, and made a pretty good comparison. But what bothers me most is not being in the Hall of Fame. It's almost like Mickey Mantle. I lost my lifetime 300 batting average.
Oh, I like
the last 2 years of my career because of injury. Yeah. I had 303 and I wound up 296. That bothers me more than anything.
Well, I'll have you know, I did vote for you for the Cardinals Hall of Fame this year. And was
thank you.
Disappointed that you did not make it, but regardless, there'll be time. Okay, you did some research on you, and it's in the book as well. You set out an entire year of high school baseball because of a dispute with a coach. Is that correct?
I quit my high school team my senior year. Yeah.
So did you ever go back to that guy and just stick it to him?
My brother sees him.
Oh, he's still around.
He's still alive.
Oh, you gotta go. Come on.
No, it's fine. I'm sure it bothers him because it's kind of a stain. He shouldn't have been handling kids, number one. And Gary runs into him, my brother, occasionally, and the conversation always turns into that. And it's a long time ago.
Oh man, I can't think of a human on the planet that is more he needs a I'm Keith Hernandez. You absolutely have to say I'm Keith Hernandez to him. Okay, so I don't want to get too detailed, but in the book you talk about some of the drug use with the Cardinals, and then with the Mets you did not use drugs.
Right.
But the Mets, I've read the book about the Mets. You seem like you were the only player not doing it there. Did they all think that you were like a cop? Did you
No. There was very few players that were doing it.
Okay, but just the high profile.
Only the ones, there's not that many guys doing it. There was more, it just wasn't that prevalent. Right. And I wasn't like the cop. I was just on my way to
Yeah, you were just doing a new thing, right?
A new path.
For the record, there's a serious drug problem among writers. I'm just letting you right now. No one talks about this, but it's totally true. Who was the worst commentator that you ever actually? So a player that didn't have your natural skills, they thought would be good, and then went to go broadcast a game and were absolutely terrible.
That would be a terrible thing to say.
That's right. We'll bleep out the name. Don't bleep out the name.
It's all a matter of how there's broadcasters I don't like.
Right. I know, but someone that tried it and was clearly just nope, we can't put you on a broadcast every day. That's still great, a great player, but maybe just not natural broadcaster.
I cannot. There's a lot of them, but I won't mention their names.
Okay. He clearly was talking about. We'll just go to the next question. Is your MVP trophy visible to guests in your home?
It's the only thing that's visible to guests in my home.
Okay,
I'm proud of that one.
That's great to know, because my next question was, how about the Emmys? Or where are your Emmys?
The Emmys are okay. The Emmys are. I got all my Emmys, or 3 of them, I believe. They are proudly displayed because it is something I never dreamed of doing. I had a baseball bat in my hand when I was 5. It's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a major league star. I never dreamed of. I look at those Emmys and I go, "You got to be kidding me!"
But are they in the same place, or is the Emmy
They're in the same room,
in the study, and
they're in my den. They're in the same room. But my gold gloves are down in my gold gloves are down in the basement.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
And my silver bat's in a closet.
Oh, wow. It's good to know where your priorities are. You're a glove man. Did you ever watch Seinfeld before you were on it?
No, I'm not a primetime watcher.
Not a primetime watcher? Only like midnight.
Oh, there's the scene. I love it. We had to shoot that scene. I love that
you're so giddy to see it.
That scene we had to shoot. That scene took 4 days. I'm from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6. We sat there with all 3 of us, and at different times in between takes. We were there all day. We got silly.
And you had you'd never watched the show. You knew nothing about the show.
No, nothing about the show.
Wow.
Well, baseball players, we played night games.
Right.
I was only a year and a half retired. And
this is the age of VCRs too. You couldn't DVR or TiVo.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't have any knowledge of the show, and boy, how lucky was I.
Well, that brings my next question. Would your life have been different if, say, you'd have been asked to be on ALF or something, or Night Court?
I think it would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, people know who I am from
ALF
Seinfeld.
Is great. I'm not gonna. Okay, this last question on Seinfeld. Do you actually like the movie JFK? That's the whole. Do you like the movie?
I liked the movie.
Okay.
I wasn't crazy about it, but I liked it. It was an intense, gripping movie.
Do you think Oswald acted alone?
No, I don't. I think it was a conspiracy.
Interesting. All right. Did you ever go, by the way, this is a question we ask all of our guests, on any of your shows, did you ever actually have to go on air with pink eye like Bob Costas in the Olympics? Remember when he had to do that? It was really rough, and he kept sending him out. You ever pink eye when you were on the air? Never happened?
No, but I've had road maps on my eyes sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But not pink eye.
Hard earned. And the last question of these, what is the most terrifying thing you have ever seen Mr. Met do?
Well, he's only got 4 fingers, but he managed to do something they got on the front page.
Oh, yes.
So that was probably.
For the record, if you have 4 fingers, you cannot give someone the middle finger.
He could have won on a technicality.
Yeah, by the definition, you cannot flip someone off with the middle finger. Okay, now we're gonna play a game. This game is called Just for Celebrities.
Okay.
You are, of course, a very famous Just for Men spokesperson, and so here are 6 celebrities that I personally believe all dye their hair, but 3 of them admit it, and 3 of them deny it.
Okay.
So tell me which ones you think are more likely to have admitted it or to deny it. First, Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez, admit or deny?
She denies.
She admits. She admits.
Oh, good for her.
I guess if you look like Jennifer Lopez, you can really just kind of admit.
Good for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next, Susan Sarandon. Susan Sarandon.
She dies.
She does die, but does she admit it or does she deny?
She has to admit it.
She denies it. She denies it. She
Okay.
is 71 years old.
She
and
looks great, doesn't
she
she?
does look great. She does look great. But okay, speaking of our former guy, Bob Costas. Bob Costas, admit or deny?
Denies.
Denies correct.
And he's
Denies
wrong.
correct. Of course. That is an obvious one. Of course he denies it. Okay, next, Nicolas Cage.
Admits.
He admits. That's correct. That's correct. Okay, next, Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt, admit or deny?
Deny.
That's incorrect. He does in fact admit. He
Good.
does in fact. Yeah, good for him. Good for him. I guess again, we're finding the most attractive people just feel comfortable admitting it. And finally, Rob Lowe. Rob Lowe.
Denies.
Denies is correct. Denies is correct. I feel like you just find a little
he's
bit.
a Met fan, but
I know, yeah. He's a back Indianapolis guy too. He likes all the Colts. Okay, last thing, final thing. This has been so much fun. So the last thing we do, we have a thing called "How Fast Can You Say Things on This Show That You're with Will on Right Now?" Basically, it's outbursts. I give you a topic and 30 seconds on the clock, and you give me, like, if I said
one word out of them.
disciples. And you'd be like, you'd have 10 seconds to say Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
All right.
So it's basically like that. So no wrong answers. I mean, there are wrong answers. You just won't be punished for them.
Okay.
So this is specifically for your career. It's not too hard, I promise. Name the 7 professional baseball teams that you have played on, including the minors. The 7 professional baseball teams that you personally have worn the uniform on. 30 seconds on the clock. And go.
St. Pete, Little Rock, Travelers, Tulsa Oilers.
Yes.
St. Louis Cardinals.
Yes.
Cleveland Indians.
Yes.
New York Mets.
Yes, and you're missing one. Think.
Oh, no.
Think rehab. Think rehab. Think injury.
Oh, that would have been St. Lucie Mets.
That's correct. 7 out of 7. The
Yes.
first person. 10 seconds left. Okay, so what else is going on? How's everything? No, you got so much time left. You absolutely nailed it. That was amazing. You're the first guest to ever
I should
get
know
every single
where
one.
I play.
Yeah, well, it was an easy one. Yeah. It's like asking me the names of my children. I'd get at least one. All right, sir. Absolute honor to have you on. The book
Thank
is
you.
I'm Keith Hernandez, giving it the Will Leitch bump, as they say. Sir, thank you very much for your time. I'm very honored to have you on.
Thank you. What happened to your finger?
Oh, so I was making my wife Mother's Day breakfast,
And you sliced?
bread knife. Tip
Oh, my
right
God.
off. Yeah,
That
so
had to hurt.
I'm hoping they'll CGI this into like a massive like cartoon hammer or something. I thought that would be fun. That's it for this week's Will Leitch Show. Many thanks to Keith Hernandez, the most mustachioed man to ever walk these hallowed halls, for being such a fun time. Catch us next week on SITV or wherever your Will Leitches are sold.